Welcome to our second in a series of Inside Access programs. On this episode, we're featuring Roadmaster Inc., headquartered in Vancouver, Washington. Established in 1970, the company has been in the forefront of design, development, and manufacturing of tow bars, auxiliary braking systems, and suspension components for motorhomes and other vehicles. The company has now developed an innovative new line of travel trailer suspension products that we'll learn all about in today's show. Now, let's join our moderator, Michelle Fontaine.
Well, hello, everyone. Yes, this is Rollin on TV's second Inside Access, and we're very pleased to be bringing Roadmaster to you. Our guest for Roadmaster is David Robinson, VP of Roadmaster Inc. Our co-host today is Jeff Johnston, Associate Producer for Rollin on TV, and also tech writer for Travel, Trailer, and Motorhome magazines. And I'll bring them up in just a moment. Few things I want to say first. Please leave your comments in the comment area. We will be answering your questions live, and even after the show, when we're not live anymore, this comment thread is going to stay open so you can keep asking your questions. We've got Kerry over at the Roadmaster team who's going to be on top of that, and I'm sure David's going to be after the show as well. So please get those questions flowing. I see a few already. Great. Let's see, what else? Oh, share. Please share with your RV friends, groups, pages, wherever you can share this. This is going to be a fascinating program. And oh, yeah, David in our practice session yesterday told me he loves to answer questions. So let's give him lots of questions to answer. And one more thing, we have a surprise guest coming on in a little bit. So stay tuned so you can see who that is. So now let me bring up our guest, David Robinson, VP of Roadmaster. Hello, David.
Hi, good morning.
And Jeff Johnston. All right.
Good morning, Michelle, and howdy, David. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
This ought to be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Are you guys ready for me to go down?
Yes, ma'am.
Take it over? All right.
David, in the interest of full disclosure, David and I have known each other for quite a few years.
Yeah, not to date you, but I think
for us, quite a few years.
I've doubled in age since we first met, so
okay. Yeah, just about with me too. I was thinking about that when I started at first at Trailer Life and Motorhome and where I am now. And the older I get, the closer I get to the target audience for RVers, or the longer I'm in the business. So
me too.
Anyway, how long have you been with Roadmaster? And can you tell us a little bit about what Roadmaster is and what your principal products and such are?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I also just want to thank everybody. Thank you for having me. We appreciate your time and your interest. And hopefully I can be of some help to anybody that has any questions. So Roadmaster has been around for about 50 years now. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. It all started with Jerry Edwards. He still owns the company. Started out with $3,000 in a toolbox, parlayed that into an RV dealership, turned the RV dealership into a small distributor in the industry. And then he went from distribution into manufacturing. So to make a long story short, we've been manufacturing tow bars since his early days as an RV dealer. But predominantly, we're best known now for our towing category, which would be tow bars, braking systems, everything related to towing a car behind a motorhome, whether that's wiring or safety cables, lighting. But we've branched out over the years. We've gotten into suspension, so anything to do with the handling of a motorhome, primarily front sway bars, rear sway bars, steering stabilizers, track bars. So things that make your RV handle frankly, the way they should have when they were new, but never did. And then most recently, we've gotten into towables. So we're now offering suspension products for travel trailers and fifth wheels, which is a brand new market for everybody because nobody's really doing it. And we're really excited about it. So me personally, to hopefully fully answer your question, I've been with the company since 1992. Gosh, it's getting close to 30 years.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the getting into the towing side of things, or the towable side of things, I should say, is a tremendous idea because, as you suggested, there's not very many people in that business. There are some higher end products available that are typically only used on higher end trailers, of course. But the new products that you've told us about and you'll be talking about today look really exciting and look like something that anyone who tows a trailer any reasonable distance, if you go to your local campground 20 miles away a couple of weekends of summer, you might not need it. But if you're doing any kind of travel, boy, your products look just great.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to share.
And something that we need to talk about right up front, which sets your company apart from your competitors, as far as I know, is about all of your products being made in the USA.
I mean, it is a distinguishing factor. Jerry, the owner of the company, he's always believed in doing as much as we can here. He really likes to keep labor here in the States. So what we do is we take the raw steel or stainless steel or aluminum. It comes in one end of the factory, typically in 20 or 40 foot lengths, and we machine it and weld it and turn it and assemble it and box it. We write our own instructions. We really do as much as we can internally, and then we have finished goods that go out the other end. So we really are a true American manufacturer, and because we're making everything ourselves, it allows us to better control both the quality and quantity. And one of the things that I think we're really well known for is our testing, and we make some of the strongest products in the industry as a result of that testing.
And regarding the testing, industry standard, I think it varies all over the board, of course, but a lot of industries test maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 or even less, depending on the nature of the industry. But you guys, I hear, test everything, every single one.
Yeah, we do a 1-for-1 testing, just before it's boxed and shipped out the door. So, I mean, that's pretty unique because, as you said, most people don't take the time to inspect every part. They just assume if the 100th part was right, then the other 99 are as well. But it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. We've learned over the years the hard way that, we can't rely on anybody but ourselves to make sure that it's right. And as an example of that, one thing that we don't make are circuit boards for our braking systems. And what we learned kind of the hard way early on was that we had to do an inspection on every single board. So we invested in thermal imaging technology and cameras, and we literally know what the thermal image of a printed circuit board should be when it's under normal operation. But it allows us to see hot spots and unusual zones that are going to fail down the road. So we learned how to identify items that are going to fail on those circuit boards as a result of the testing. And we test every single board. If you go around our braking assembly station, you're going to find that there's several test stations. So we don't just test at the end. We test as the product's being assembled, because we don't believe there's any sense in taking a bad part, putting a complete assembly together, only to discover at the end of the process that there's a problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. That I'm sure that pays off well as far as warranty returns and that part of the business.
Yeah, and we just don't want to have customers have problems.
Yeah. And when Jerry started the company, were the tow bars and towing accessories for automobiles, that was pretty much the first product that launched the company?
Yeah, the very first product that launched our company was a tow bar called the Roadmaster, and it rapidly became the industry standard because every tow bar before then was rigid A-frame. And that rigid A-frame required you to maneuver the car precisely up to the ball so that the coupler could engage the trailer ball on the motorhome. Well, the problem with that is that unlike a small trailer, you can't move that trailer around. So you had to be spot on. You had to have it exactly lined up. And what that typically meant was that the husband was out in front guiding while the wife was in the car driving, or vice versa. But at the end of the day, it became a two-person job and a lot of back and forth before they got it right. And early on, we actually teased ourselves a lot that our Stowmaster tow bar was a marriage saver, because now one person could do it all by themselves without help very quickly and easily. So the self-aligning tow bar just allows you to get close, you couple it up, and then as you drive away, the arms will self-extend and self-lock, and thereby give you that rigid A-frame that you need for safety and strength.
And so all of your tow bars today are flexible like that, adjustable to an extent?
Yeah, there's several inches. If you're looking at the image on the screen there, you'll see the larger outer arms with the locking handle on top, and then you'll see the smaller round stainless steel inner arm. And that arm can compress all the way up to where the larger arm is meeting the black part at the back of that image. So you've got about a foot of motion on each arm. And that just means that you just have to get close. You don't even have to be in alignment. The car could be at an angle to the motorhome. And yes, in answer to your question, all of our tow bars today have that availability. We do, in fact, make an old school rigid A-frame tow bar for somebody that just maybe they're only going to tow once, or maybe just move their car from California to New York or something. But for anybody that's going to be hooking up and disconnecting on a repetitive basis, like most of our customers are, they really want one of these self-aligning, self-adjustable tow bars. And just to take it one step further, we also invented the world's first non-binding tow bars. So what that means is that when you go to disconnect your tow bar, they can be difficult to release. In fact, the sharper the car is at an angle to the motorhome, the harder it would be to release. We have a whole series of non-binding tow bars, and the non-binding bars don't care. It doesn't matter how you stop, it doesn't matter the angle, much easier to release.
Yeah, well, I've done that particular dance a few times, including hitching dinghy vehicles to motorhomes by myself. And even with an adjustable tow bar, you pull up, you kind of lay the thing down, look at it, okay, pull up a little farther, lay it down again. But it's still a whole lot easier than trying to line up that solid A-frame that you used to see on a lot of Jeeps and off-road vehicles way back in the old days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And is it correct that in the case of your products, some of them are designed to stow on the dinghy, the towed vehicle, and some of them are designed with the quick releases that stay on the motorhome?
Yeah, that's true. So historically, all of the tow bars connected to the car, and our Stowmaster, the reason we labeled it Stowmaster is because it's stowed. It just folded up literally in a couple of seconds. It would store on the front of the vehicle. Now it has quick disconnects, pull a couple pins, you can easily take it off, but it's designed to store on the vehicle. That's kind of, for a lot of people, that's kind of the way of the past. Almost everybody is going to what we call motorhome mounted tow bars. And with a motorhome mounted tow bar, it folds up and stores at the back of the RV. It only attaches to the receiver. So it's literally just living in the receiver, but it folds up nicely and tightly up against the back of the RV, so it's out of the way. I might mention for people that may or may not be familiar, if you're interested in dinghy towing, you're going to need more than just the tow bar. The tow bar is what goes between the RV and the car.
Oh, yeah.
But you're also going to need something called a base plate. And a base plate is what is custom made for that particular year, make, and model of car. And it's a bolt-on bracketry, and it typically comes through the grill area. And it's designed to be pretty much invisible when you're not towing. But when you're ready to tow, you can insert and rotate arms into place and then pin the tow bar directly to it. And away you go down the road. Beyond the base plate, by law, you have to have safety cables to go between the car and the motorhome. And then you also need a wiring kit so that the lights function on the back of the towed car in sync with the motorhome.
So it's not like my old Jeep CJ7 that had a couple of these gigantic metal edifices bolted onto the front bumper that were hanging out there pretty much 24/7.
Yep.
And
that used to be the way they were, Jeff, but
Yeah.
today, pretty much, if
they're
you
a little
didn't know,
sleeker,
no, yeah,
a little sleeker and better integrated today. Yeah.
clean and
Got
unseen.
a viewer question there from Jim Pavlinik from Holland, Michigan. Jim, I hope that the tulips are looking pretty good this year up there. And he says he's noticed that a tow vehicle with active shutters requires a Blue Ox connection rather than a Roadmaster. Is this correct? Active shutters. Honestly, I'm not sure what active shutters means.
So
David, do you know what?
active shutters is kind of a relatively new thing. They've been out for about 3 or 4 years, but they're getting more popular. And depending upon the speed that you're driving the car, these shutters in the grill will either open or close more. And it's all designed to get more fuel efficiency. So if you have a car with active shutters and you're driving it down the road, you might get another 0.5 or 1 mile per gallon fuel economy. And they call it active because it automatically adjusts how wide open those shutters are based on speed.
And that,
so, go ahead.
Is that based on, but isn't that when you're mainly driving the vehicle? And if you're towing it behind a motorhome, or is this some sort of mechanical interlock with the drivetrain that makes it work whether the vehicle is turned on or not?
It really has nothing to do with the towing. It's just in the way. So where all of the base plates for all the manufacturers come out, these shutters are in the way.
Oh,
so
I see. Okay, mechanically.
Our base plates around these active shutters. If they interfere with the shutter movement, then you'll get an error code on the dash, and then you have to get it reset. So it's important that each manufacturer designs the base plates. And to answer Jim's specific question, we make base plates for all kinds of vehicles with active shutters. So it's possible that perhaps on his particular vehicle at the time that he was inquiring, perhaps we don't have the design for that vehicle yet. But that would be pretty unusual for us. Normally, we're first to market on the new fits, and we do make base plates for active air shutters. So, Jim, feel free to follow up after the show, and we'll take a look at your year, make, and model and find out what the status is. But there shouldn't be any reason why we can't fit that vehicle unless we just haven't seen it yet.
And we got another question from, I think, Michelle here. That's about a 25-foot Grand Design travel trailer, and she's excited learning about the shocks and the slipper springs. Now that you guys are getting into the towable end of things, tell us a little bit about the system and what it does and what people can expect from it.
Well, kind of look at it from this perspective. How many cars have you had in your life that didn't have a shock?
I remember driving with a friend in high school who thought it was really cool to take the shocks out so the car would just porpoise down the road, and but that wasn't standard practice.
Yep. Nope. The reason why all cars have shocks today is because nobody would ride in them if they didn't have shocks. They make a huge difference in how a vehicle handles and the comfort of the ride. If you take a look underneath travel trailers today, you're going to find that the suspension looks very much like the old horse and buggy. We basically have stacks of leaf springs, and every time that the trailer or the fifth wheel hits a bump or a pothole, it's going to bounce. It's going to react to that. Now, for the most part, people don't care because they're not back there riding in the vehicle, and they don't really appreciate or understand how much force is being applied. But we actually took a sensor and took it over a road course. And what we learned is that the average Richter scale rating for a travel trailer as it's going down the road is about 3.2. So the entire time that you're pulling that trailer or that fifth wheel, you're ending up with the equivalent of a 3.2 magnitude earthquake the entire time. Now, again, you're not in it, so you don't see it or feel it. But that's actually not quite true. A lot of those forces, a lot of those potholes and bumps, those are being relayed through the frame and through the coupler of the trailer or the fifth wheel hitch of the trailer up to the driver. So there's a lot of pushing and pulling and bumping and grinding and things they call chucking going on between the towable and the truck. And a lot of that goes away if you have a proper suspension on the travel trailer. So the first kit that I'm going to talk about, is called the Comfort Ride shock system. And in the photo that you see there, those shocks are those silver items that you see. And basically what we've patented is the methodology to attach the shocks in such a fashion that they can be in their proper orientation. You'll notice that they're approaching vertical. There are other companies that make shocks for trailers, but they pretty much lie down, and it's really difficult for a shock to do its job if it's not in the proper vertical orientation. Thank you for blowing that up, Michelle. So the first thing that we did is we figured out a way to add shocks, and that's one kit.
That's not easy, because there are so many different trailers, so many different arrangements of axle and spring to floor clearance, frame clearance side to side, how close the tires are to the frames. They're all over the map, really.
Yep. So these shock kits are not vehicle specific. They're just based on the axle diameter. You'll notice some U-bolts attaching to our black brackets. So those U-bolts match the diameter of the axle. In order to get the correct kit for your vehicle, you just need to know the axle diameter. There's 3 standard sizes in the RV industry. The most common is 3-inch. That's probably about 75% of our sales. And if you know the axle diameter, then you'll know which shock kit to get. So 2 3/8 is for small trailers, 3-inch is pretty much the standard. And now a few heavy duty trailers are using 3.5-inch. As you can see, these are all bolt on. So for the do-it-yourselfers, somebody that would be comfortable changing a leaf spring, somebody maybe that greases their own bearings, a guy like that could probably do this himself without too much difficulty. It is all bolt on. The second system, the second part that we've come out with is something called a slipper spring kit. And if you'll notice, kind of in between the 2 tires, there's this big black box that the shocks are attaching to. Now, if you did not have the slipper spring kit, then the shocks would be attaching to the brackets that come with the shock kit. But because in this particular picture, we're showing both systems being installed, we're able to mount the shocks to that black box. We call it the slipper box. And what you're not able to see is the ends of the leaf springs. On most travel trailers, you have an eye to an eye. If you take a look at the picture that is marked with green and orange, the green components are the slipper spring components. The orange components are the shock components. But if you look at the nearest spring to me, you'll see that it's held on to the leaf spring hanger with just a bolt. Basically, the end of the leaf spring has an eye that secures it. What you can't see is the other end of the spring. The other end of the spring does not bolt on. It's a slipper spring. It actually has a roller, and it allows those slipper springs to glide back and forth, forward and backward, as the trailer's hitting potholes and bumps. Now, on a traditional axle, before our equipment's installed, there's something called a rocker or an equalizer that connects the front springs to the back springs. And so what happens is every time the trailer goes through a dip or a pothole, that energy is pushed into that spring. And like a good spring does, it reacts to that force and it pushes back in the other direction. Well, it's connected to the rear spring through that equalizer. And so now it's relaying that bump to the back axle. And guess what? When that back axle hits that same pothole, it does the whole thing in reverse. So you're kind of getting twice the bounce for the same pothole. What we do is we break that connection. So we're essentially creating an independent axle trailer because the front axle is no longer connected to the back axle through the leaf springs. And because we're doing that, we're basically cutting the amount of bumps in half, and it's a lot less stressful on the trailer. There's a lot less movement, and therefore it handles better. You're not pushing the truck around nearly as much. So go ahead.
I think it's worth mentioning that because this slipper spring suspension, as you have it designed, is very different than what people have been accustomed to for your conventional trailer suspension. But the slipper spring design has been around for decades and decades in use on heavy commercial trucks, minus the roller on the end of the spring. If you look at a lot of big commercial semi-truck trailers, they'll have the eye bolted at one end, and then the other end is just simply a kind of a rounded off spring that like in the case here, slides on the bearing surface. So this isn't the new technology. It's tried and proven over millions of miles of use. Only here it's just applied to a travel trailer in a smaller size and a significantly upgraded and improved design altogether.
Exactly right. Yep. And I might mention that this was not actually our invention. We acquired this from an inventor who's actually made a number of different inventions in the RV industry. But the short of it is that he had it for a few years before we did. So it is time tested and proven. It's not as though that this is brand new to the marketplace. So I should mention that, who is a customer for this? This is probably not for somebody that's, a 3 weekend a year kind of person. But if you've ever towed much with travel trailers or fifth wheels, then you know that there's this whole process that you go to when you tear down camp. And one of those things is to make sure that you take certain things off the walls, maybe a TV. There's things that you got to put away. That this stuff on the counter is going to slide off. You would be amazed at how much of that is unnecessary. You no longer have to take all the clothes off the clothes rod and put them in the shower there because they're not going to fall off. We do a lot of different things, but what I've been appreciative of is the kind of the love letters that we've gotten from customers saying what a difference it made, not only for them not having to tear things down, but also it's just it's a better tow. It handles better. On those shocks, we also tilt the shocks inbound at the top by about 15 degrees. And what that does is it prevents the trailer from rocking. I'll see if I can get my hands in here. So it kind of prevents the trailer from rocking sideways because the shocks are always pushing against it. So it helps with sway. It helps with body roll. It definitely helps with the up and down motion that's continually going on because of the leaf springs. It also helps with porpoising. That's where you're kind of seesawing over the axles from front to back. So there's a whole lot of things that it does. One thing that people don't think about is the life of their trailer. Imagine that your house is going through a 3.2 magnitude earthquake for every time you tow it, right? So when a trailer is new, it's got beautiful roof sealant, it's pliable, it's flexible. But guess what happens when it's been out in the sun for 3 or 4 years? It starts to harden, gets brittle. Now you take that trailer out on the road and it starts to flex and move and jolt. And that's how those seals break. And that's why you have to maintain those seals as often as you do. So a side benefit to the Comfort Ride products is that it can help the trailer last longer by just making sure you don't get that water intrusion, and it reduces some of the maintenance because you're not having to reseal the roof all the time.
Well, something else that it's not necessarily a Roadmaster product, obviously, but something else that is also a tremendous help in this regard is balancing your trailer tires. Very few RV manufacturers bother balancing trailer tires. And anyone who's driven a tow vehicle, and you've thrown a weight off the wheel, you feel it immediately. Either the steering wheel is oscillating or the back axle is bouncing and vibrating. And that's just because you're not in the trailer. It's like with the springs. You're not in the trailer to feel it, but it's still happening. And that vibration can tremendously aggravate any wear and tear, or that 3.5 earthquake is then augmented by this constant vibration. So get those trailer tires balanced and keep them balanced, and it'll help reduce wear and tear on the trailer. It provides longer tread life and all those kind of benefits.
Yeah, and also reduce roadside emergencies where you have a tire blowout.
Yeah, and that goes on an awful lot with the some of the cheap imported tires that RV manufacturers are unfortunately using on their trailers these days. We got a question from a Sandy Purley. Will you do any discussion of sway bars and other help for Class C truck chassis? I guess by Class C truck chassis, I'm guessing you mean a Class C motorhome. And you've come to the right place, coincidentally enough, because David can probably provide a few thoughts on that as well. That's also part of his company's bailiwick.
Yep, absolutely. So here's the thing. RV manufacturers learned a long time ago that it's the floor plan, it's the color scheme, it's all the accessories and amenities that the trailer comes with. That's what sells the RV. There's very few people that will buy the RV based on the chassis that's being used. And as a result, over the years, wherever they can save money, and what I mean by that is if it's not selling RVs, take it out, right? And so a lot of people are not buying RVs based on how well they handle. In fact, a lot of people, when they buy a new RV, don't even, and specifically I'm talking about motorized units here, a lot of them don't even take it for a test drive. So the truth of the matter is that the RVs are under suspension. When they leave the factory, they're usually too heavy of a load for the suspension and the chassis.
It's that 5 pounds of stuff in a 3 pound bucket situation. Every manufacturer wants to put 5 pounds of stuff in there.
Exactly right. So Roadmaster has been in the suspension business now, 14, 15 years, I guess. And what we do is we manufacture sway bars. In some cases, they're just a sway bar to add into a chassis that doesn't already have one. But more often than not, we are taking the OEM sway bars off and replacing them. So a typical OEM sway bar might be in the diameter of 1 or 1 1/4 inches. We're typically putting on 1 1/2, 1 5/8. For some military applications, we actually go up to 2-inch diameter. And it doesn't sound like a huge difference, but each 1/8 of an inch difference in diameter is about 30% more sway resistance. So it's actually about the difference between the OEM and ours. We're going to get you about 90% to 95% more sway control. So what is sway? That's if you've ever gone into a gas station and the whole RV is rocked from side to side, that's what we're calling sway in a motorhome. If you're going down the road and a semi blows by you in the opposite direction and your RV leans to the side, that's sway. And here's one of the things that a lot of people don't connect the dots to. Whenever people are having handling problems, the very first thing they go to is a steering stabilizer. And we make and sell lots and lots of steering stabilizers. And it helps. Don't get me wrong. A steering stabilizer is a valuable item. But what a steering stabilizer does is it's kind of like going to the doctor and you've got some symptoms and the doctor gives you some medicine to make the symptoms go away. You're still sick, but you don't feel it as much. And that's the same thing that the steering stabilizer does in a lot of cases, is it takes these bad things that are going on with the suspension and it hides a lot of them and it makes it feel a lot better. And trust me, it does handle a lot better with just a steering stabilizer. But a lot of the handling issues that people are having with a motorhome are actually caused by the motion of the RV. So they're sitting up there quite a ways above the chassis. And when it moves, they're steering to counteract that movement. Well, it wasn't necessarily the tires on the road that were moving. It was the body where you're sitting. Oh, go ahead.
It looks like it's time for a word from our sponsor, so to speak.
Hello. Well, thank you guys. Boy, great information. But we're at the official halftime. So I wanted to just tell everybody a quick reminder. If you didn't see the Rollin on TV show we aired a couple of weeks ago, featuring the Roadmaster factory and David, then it will be airing on all our TV channels in a couple of weeks. It's also on our website now, so you could take a look at it. If you go to rollinontv.com and just click on the past show button, you'll be able to see the feature segment we did on Roadmaster and get even more information about their factory and their product. And now I want to introduce our surprise guest, Rick Kessler. Rick is the executive editor of RV Business Magazine and its sister publication, Woodall's Campground Management. And Rick is also an active RVer himself, and he has some questions to ask David. So I'm going to pop Rick out. I'm going to pop Rick out. But also, please share and get your questions going. So let me get Rick up here. He's laughing at me. Hello, Rick.
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for popping me up here.
Okay. Catch you later, guys.
And I think like everybody else, I don't know how active an RVer I am at the moment. Hopefully that's going to change soon enough. Hey, David, good to see you. Jeff, you too. But I'm a big fan of the Comfort Ride system. But a couple of quick follow-up questions, if I could.
Sure.
I'm a DIYer. I could probably handle this, but what kind of time frame are we looking at? Is this a full day, a full week, a weekend? What kind of installation?
So just to kind of give you an idea, most installers are charging about 3.5 hours to put the shock kits on. Most installers are charging about 3.5 hours to just do the slipper springs by themselves. My recommendation is, if you're going to do one or the other, just do the shocks. But if you want the slipper springs, do both. They kind of do more together than they do apart. They're more than the sum of their pieces. Now, for a do-it-yourselfer, if you're like me, the very first time you do something, it's going to take you 2 to 3 times as long as the second time. So, a guy that's pretty handy, that has his tools, comfortable being on a creeper underneath a chassis, the very first one he does, he's probably going to take 6 hours to put on. The second one he does, he could probably do in 4 hours.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Now, we're, for anyone who might not know, we're a trade magazine, so a more business to business. So I've got to ask you this question. How's the pandemic do for you guys?
It's been challenging. Like most companies, rightfully so. A lot of people are kind of stopped in their tracks, literally. And as a result, our business is really influenced by the purchase of new motorhomes. Our business is really influenced by the purchase of new cars, both of which have been dramatically reduced. Roadmaster itself has stayed open, and that's because we manufacture sway bars and suspension components for ambulances and fire trucks, and so we're considered an essential business. We have been fortunate to keep the vast majority of our employees on board. We're still here. Right now, we're making a lot of inventory because the sales aren't matching our production capability. But we're getting through it. And, we got through the gas crunches in the 70s, and we got through 9/11, and we'll get through this too. 2008, 2009 was really challenging. So this will just be another notch on our belt.
David, I was really hoping you would tell me that you've been using that time to work on all these top secret R&D projects and that you're going to share it with us right now.
Well, we're always working on something, and we do have some products in development right now. Probably not going to be ready to launch for another 6 to 8 months. Part of it's been delayed as a result of this virus that we're all dealing with. But it does have to do with suspension and handling, and predominantly on motorized, not towables. So we do have some stuff in store, but I'm just not at a point where I can tell you a whole lot about it yet.
Well, you have my contact info.
All right. Sounds good. Will do.
The only other question I would ask is, are you sensing any kind of pent-up demand from are more people getting in touch with you guys to get some of the tow bars and whatnot?
We track inbound calls, and we track daily dollar sales, and it was really bleak and going in the wrong direction several weeks ago. But at least from our numbers, we hit bottom a couple of weeks ago. Things have started, not dramatically, but they're definitely trending in the right direction. I know that a lot of large companies stopped, they even canceled open purchase orders because they didn't know what was going to happen with the virus. They're slowly starting to run out of inventory, and now, they're starting to place some small orders with us. So yeah, I think that there's some pent up demand. There's some anecdotal evidence with some dealerships that are starting to move some units now. So I definitely am feeling like we're on the rebound side, at least as long as there's not a second wave of the virus that hits soon. And I'm seeing good things. So I'm positive and upbeat, and we're heading in the right direction.
I just got off the phone with one dealer that both of you guys know, Shannon Nill over at Guarantee RV, and he had nothing but absolutely terrific things to say about how the customers are coming through the door and actually purchasing motorhomes and travel trailers.
Fantastic. That's great news.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it. Jeff.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
All right. See you next time, Rick.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Well, to briefly get back to Sandy's question about the E450 chassis and the suspension sway bars and so on, and you were talking about the steering stabilizer up front, which I might add always has to fight the E450 chassis has had a really strange bump steer characteristic since day one. and I don't think they've ever fixed it. Part of it's due to that independent suspension they use with which people, mechanics and so on that I know refer to it as a chicken wing suspension because it's kind of goes on both sides of the vehicle from pivots. But when you also have something that is replacement or augment sway bars and track bars, and those are both, I know, very important components that can make a vehicle operate so much better, particularly the track bar, because like we were discussing, the manufacturers build a motorhome and they put as much as they possibly can on that chassis, and that sometimes means the vehicle has an extremely long rear overhang from the rear axle to the back of the coach. And that's, when the truck passes, when you get that crosswind, it's like a big rudder back there, and it pushes that back end, which moves the front end. And part of that is caused by the leaf springs flexing laterally and allowing the axle to move laterally relative to the chassis and body. And your track bar components pretty much, well, I wouldn't say eliminate, but reduce that down to next to nothing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of confusion by dealers, by customers about what products do what kinds of things. So let me just try to tell you what the different products do and what kind of gives you the most bang for the buck if you're only going to do one thing. So first of all, track bars used to be extremely imperative because everything was a leaf spring suspension. And we just make the track bars for leaf spring suspensions, and there's getting to be fewer and fewer of those out there. So, but if you have an older chassis on a leaf spring suspension, basically the thing that's connecting the body of the RV to the chassis of the RV are your leaf springs. So if you can imagine turning a corner, well, as soon as you turn a corner, the body of the RV wants to roll. It stretches the leaf spring. Then when the body comes back, it goes over center and rolls the other way. And that's why you kind of get this rocking seesaw motion back and forth, side to side. And the entire time, the consumer is trying to correct that with his steering because he's feeling that movement up where he's sitting. So if you have a chassis with a leaf spring suspension and you don't have a track bar, and I'll tell you the most notorious one is the Ford F-53 chassis. They had a real handling problem. In fact, in 2005, late 2005 production, they started to put a track bar on the front at the OEM level. But there's still, tens of thousands of RVs out there that age and older that don't have them. That's the number.
The original, the GM P30 chassis was no prize winner from the standpoint of the back end moving either. But that chassis, of course, there's tens of thousands out there, but it went through several subsequent owners, and I'm not sure if it's even available these days, or if it's available through another manufacturer.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with every single model of every single chassis, but I can tell you that if you have leaf spring suspension and you don't have a track bar, that's probably your first investment. That's the number one thing. Yeah. Most new chassis are not leaf springs, so that wouldn't apply to most late model vehicles. So the sway bars, we make front sway bars for the front end, rear sway bars for the rear end. If you're on a budget and you're trying to prevent that rock and roll, that motion, and again, that motion a lot of times is what's having the driver react to that movement, and therefore you're chasing the steering all the time, kind of get to the end of the day and you're just worn out and exhausted. A lot of that is caused by sway. So the rear sway bar is going to do about 60% of your sway control. If you're on a budget, start there. If you're not on a budget and you want to just knock out all sway, do a front and a rear, you'll be amazed at the difference it makes. We make the RV handle better than it was when it was new, because when it was new, it didn't have the proper chassis or suspension on it. And I'm primarily talking about gas vehicles, some diesel vehicles. I'm not talking about buses. A lot of the buses have some very sophisticated suspension components. So now let's switch over to the steering stabilizer. So a steering stabilizer does help center. It always wants to come back to center. And so you're not constantly weaving back and forth across center. A steering stabilizer will also help with rut tracking if there's grooves in the road or if the pavement's been beaten down so there's a rut there. The steering stabilizer.
And heaven forbid the tire spacing on your vehicle doesn't match the spacing on the vehicle that made the grooves in the road. because you're constantly hunting back and forth in those grooves, trying to find the right place to drive.
Exactly right. And the steering stabilizer was great for that. Our reflex steering stabilizer, the one additional benefit that it gives is blowout protection. So if you ever had a front tire blowout, the moment that steel wheel hits the pavement, it wants to go in that direction. And sometimes it will rip you right off the road. So the reflex steering stabilizer that we make absorbs that initial impact and helps you maintain control. So that's one thing the steering stabilizer does that you're not going to get with a track bar and you're not going to get with a sway bar. So in round numbers, just to kind of give people a feel, a Class C steering stabilizer is going to run you in the neighborhood of $350 to $400. A Class A steering stabilizer is going to run you in the neighborhood of $500 to $600. A front sway bar, depending upon the chassis, can be $300 to $600. Rear sway bar can be $500 to $1,100. So they can vary wildly depending upon how much diameter is necessary for that chassis. And then a track bar is typically going to run you in the $400 to $500 range. So just to kind of give everybody a feel.
Yeah, years ago, we had a Class A motorhome as a company motorhome at Motorhome Magazine that was built. That was a National RV Dolphin product, or Seabreeze, and this was an older model, basement, so it wasn't extremely high profile, but it was a typical Class P30 chassis, and we drove that to a lot of rallies and that sort of thing, and it was a little bit, it was typical. It mushed down the road, and we did a full boat suspension on it with front and rear sway bars or upgrade. I don't remember which. Track bar out back, and Bilstein shocks all around, and of course the steering stabilizer, and that thing became an absolute dream to drive. And we were based in Southern California, in the LA area. At the time, I think we were in Ventura, and so we did a lot of drives up and down I-5 through the Central Valley, and places with subject to a lot of wind. And with that track bar on there, when you change lanes, either in a hurry, like a semi-emergency, or just changing a lane, typically with a stock motorhome like that, you make the lane change, and then once you get to where you want to be in that lane, the whole body kind of sways and moves around a little bit until it stabilizes. And with that track bar on the back, boy, you change the lane and it locks in. It's right there. Get back in the other lane, it locks in. Definitely one of the best things that you can possibly invest in for improving your motorhome's ride and handling. Ride and handling, basically.
I like to call it the big rig myth. There's a lot of people that think, well, it's big, it's heavy, it's going to drive like a Mack truck. That's just the nature of things. And that's just a myth. It does not have to handle that way. It's partly because we accept it, that the RV manufacturers continue to make them that way, because they just assume that it just has to be. And what we like to say is we can make your RV handle much more like your car.
Yeah, very big car, but nonetheless. Mm-hmm. Got a question that may be kind of a theoretical, but people, for any kind of hardware like a tow bar for a dinghy car, steel is the go-to product, and everybody accepts that. It works great. And I believe you guys now have some products that are aluminum, correct?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, the aluminum products are tested just the same way the steel products are, tested to capacity and so on. But aluminum has its characteristics that people use it for on certain products: lightweight, rust resistant, and so on. Has there been any kind of comments or reluctance from people to use an aluminum tow bar in a place where you would have used a steel tow bar? Because of perceived strength differences, for example.
I haven't felt that. I haven't heard that. It is true that aluminum is not as strong as material as steel, so therefore you have to engineer the product with that in mind. We do have two tow bars, the Nighthawk, which is our illuminated tow bar. That's the bar that lights up. So at nighttime, there's a dead spot back there behind your RV. And when I say a dead spot, I mean, there's no lights. The way most people wire their towed cars, there's nothing lit up. You got the taillights on the motorhome, and then the next thing that lights up is the taillights on the car. So there's this kind of dead spot. And if you happen to be somebody that, for whatever reason, is caught on the highways at night, we make a tow bar that lights up and illuminates that area. So it's very obvious that there's something right behind the motorhome, so somebody doesn't dive in behind you. So the Nighthawk is an aluminum tow bar, and our Sterling is an aluminum tow bar. And both of those products use aircraft grade aluminum. It's a T60, 61 aircraft grade aluminum.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really strong. It's structural. It's designed for structure. But that issue aside, when we design something, we computer test it. So we were the first company to invest literally a couple $100,000 back when it was very expensive to do this into software. It's called finite element analysis. And it allows us to see where the weak points are, and we can stress and cycle test, and we can see over the life of the product, where are the failure points, and we can design around that. But we don't stop there. We physically fatigue test. We actually have a machine that cycles the product, and our test pushes so hard on the tow bar that when you look down the length of the arms, you can actually see the arms bow out with each compression, and then you can see them bow back in each time it's pulled apart. And we have to do 150,000 cycles in and 150,000 cycles out. If anything fails, then we have to go back to the drawing board and redesign it. Now, the reason I emphasize all this about testing is there's no governmental standards for the tow bar industry, and it's really hard for the consumers to do any kind of a comparison from brand A to brand B to brand C, because each manufacturer sets up their own testing standards. And I will tell you that we know that we have the strongest, most stringent testing standards out there, because we test ours and our competitors' products to failure. And for example, one of our competitors' 10,000 pound bars does not pass our 6,000 pound test. So there is a difference.
Wow. Yeah, I know that there's now SAE standards for determining tow ratings for tow vehicles, so that all the manufacturers that make tow vehicles are playing on the same chessboard, so to speak. And one company's product that's rated to tow 10,000 will perform very much like another company's product rated to tow 10,000. That's helped an awful lot with getting some honest tow ratings out there. But looking over here at the question list again, I got to scroll back here a bit. Sandy Purley asked, says, if the vehicle is not real long and you're on a budget, would you replace the front sway or track bar first?
If I had a leaf spring suspension in the front, and again, that's kind of the way of the past. Most new motorhomes don't have it that way. But if I had a leaf spring suspension in the front, I would put a track bar on. Okay. If I did not have
and now to specify, the track bar you're talking about is one that goes on the back suspension?
No, this would be a front track bar.
Okay.
Yep. Now there are, just an aside here, there are rear track bars available as well. Roadmaster manufactures them, and you can access them through companies such as Supersteer, which is well known for their suspension components.
Yeah, down in Grants Pass. Yeah, they're good guys.
Yep, they are, and you can get rear track bars from them. So if you have leaf spring, track bars would be where I'd go first. If you do not have a leaf spring suspension in the front, I would go with the rear. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the rear sway bar, you're going to get a bigger bang for the buck than just the front.
Okay, and Kim Green says, what are the track bars or hooks to the differential, and how do they help? Well, Kim, that's kind of what we've been talking about with the track bar positions the axle under the frame and the body, so that the axle is still able to move vertically with the suspension movement, but it doesn't move horizontally, so that when your body tries to move and blow all over the place, it's locked in solid to the axle, and that gives you a lot more stability.
Yeah, good explanation. Yeah, the track bar basically is locking down the RV body to the chassis so that they move in unison. Without a track bar, the body is moving separately from the chassis, and the driver feels that and reacts to it, and then you're constantly countersteering.
Now, something that we haven't touched on yet, but which is really important, is the auxiliary braking for the towed, for the dinghy vehicle.
Yeah.
And you and I discussed before, there is no law, federal, state, or otherwise, that says you have to have an auxiliary brake in the dinghy, but it's just based on state to state laws for brakes on anything that you are towing as a trailer, which is what qualifies a dinghy. And can you talk just a little bit about your products along those lines?
Sure. And I want to just touch base because we're getting we're running a little bit long here on time, and I just want to mention, for all of our vehicle specific equipment, whether it's base plates for tow cars or whether it's sway bars or steering stabilizers, you can go to our website and we have what we call Fitmaster. So if you click on the Fitmaster, enter your vehicle's information, it'll give you the part numbers for the items that you need. And if you have any questions about any of those things, you can call us on our toll-free number, and we'll be happy. We've got 15 people here that do nothing but answer your questions, check stock, and help get you the right fit. Back to your braking question. Most states do require some kind of braking, and that's because they consider your car a trailer. So the trailer laws are what dinghies, our towed cars, have to go by. And again, on our website, there's a map by state, and it tells you what your particular state's laws are. There's essentially, there's a few different styles of braking systems. The one that you're looking at here is called the even brake. It's what I like to call a brake in the box. You literally take the box, you sit it in front of the driver's seat, it clamps to the brake pedal. And there's several different companies that make brake in the box systems. The pros to that kind of a system is that you can have the braking system when you want it and not when you don't. And if you trade vehicles or if you tow more than one vehicle, that's kind of convenient to be able to move it from vehicle to vehicle. The downside to that kind of a system is that you got to put it in and take it out every time. And if you got bad knees, it can be difficult to kneel down there, reach under the dash and clamp it to the brake pedal. So this style that you see here, the even brake, is kind of our creme de la creme brake in the box. It's all wireless transmission up to the motorhome, so you can see the braking activity up there. It's got terrain sensing logic, so it's not going to go off when it should not. You can adjust the sensitivity. Some people don't want the brakes to come on unless they're really getting onto the brakes in the motorhome. Other people want it to come on every single time they touch the brake pedal in the motorhome. So there's all different kinds of adjustments to set it up the way that you want it. All of our braking systems include an emergency breakaway. So if the car decides to take a little mini vacation from you while you're towing, it's going to bring it to a stop. What we're not showing you here, I don't believe we've got an image of our InvisiBrake. Our InvisiBrake is an example of a one-time install. It's permanently installed. It's always in the vehicle, but it's out of sight, out of mind. Hence, it's called InvisiBrake. So with that kind of a system, you just hook up like you normally do. What people like about the InvisiBrake is there's no on switch or off switch. You just hook up, plug in your power cord for your lighting, and that's what turns it on, and you're ready to go. There is a third kind of braking system which works pneumatically. There's a lot of higher end vehicles that use air brakes on their coach. We make a braking system called Roadmaster, and it actually uses the coach's own air to brake the towed vehicle. And what's nice about that is you just can't get more proportionate than using the coach's brake power to activate the car's braking system. So we've got a little bit of something for everybody, depending upon what they're interested in. But supplemental brakes, I think, are important. Think of it this way: forget about the motorhome. If your car was going down the road at 50 miles an hour, how long would it take you to stop it? How much force would it take you to stop it? A lot of people say, well, my motorhome has great big brakes and I can kind of overpower that dinghy. And if they're doing moderate braking or light braking, that's certainly true. But when do you need brakes the most? It's in an emergency situation. And that's when feet make all the difference in the world. And at 55, 60 miles per hour, the average increase in stopping distance with emergency panic braking, it's going to add another 40 to 50 feet to your stopping distance, twice the length of a car. So when you really need it most, and that's the problem, you don't need a supplemental brakes for 95% of the braking you're doing, but you do need it when you need it. And that's what they're for. Yeah.
Well, it's just a good common sense braking safety device. Here in Oregon, I think the law is any trailer 1,500 pounds or heavier is supposed to have brakes of some kind, which is why you see a lot of little bitty utility trailers with nothing.
Yep.
But it's carrying a load of bark chips back to your house, and that's a little less priority than loading up I don't know what a small car weighs, 3,000 pounds maybe.
Small car, 3,000, but most cars are pushing 3,500, 3,700 pounds.
Right, and having that pushing on the back of your motorhome.
Well, and it is, we were just talking about handling, and anytime you've got something pushing and pulling on your motorhome, that impacts your steering. So having brakes will help maintain control in a panic stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, is there anything else that we haven't touched upon? We're just about out of time here. So anything else we haven't touched upon yet that you might want to mention briefly?
Well, I see Michelle's there. If you have something on your list that we should talk about, by all means, let me know. But I would just like to say that, Roadmaster is we are a time-tested, time-proven company. We are not, there's a lot of tow bars out there. There's other suspension products out there. Most of them are going to do the job just fine. I like to say we don't build our products for the average person. We build our products for the people that are actually going to use them and use them heavily. We build our products for the people that go up to Alaska, go down to Mexico. So if you want stuff that's built to last, you want stuff that's truly American made, and you want stuff that's easy to use, that's kind of where we shine.
Cool. Very good.
Thank
Well, thank you, David.
Thank you so much, David. Great questions came in. Please continue to leave questions. Carrie's done a great job answering some of those too. Lots of detail. So thank you, Carrie, from the Roadmaster team for taking care of that. And we're out of time. But again, everyone who watches this, even in replay, go ahead and put your questions down there. We'll have Carrie and David will continue to watch and answer those questions. So thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Well, thank you, David and Michelle. It's been fun.
And we'll say adios.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.